Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Music. This is a show where we interview extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. Today, I'm interviewing Mr. Earl, my mentor, my friend, one of my drum heroes, aka the Hammer. He's a well-known musician in Jersey and Florida. He's played on a lot of different records for a lot of different artists. Without him, it would be no Behind the Music. Thanks for letting me interview you today, sir.
I'm glad I'm the inspiration for Behind the Music. That's good to know. Thanks for that. All right, Sean, you ask away. This is your show, not mine, even though it may end up on my channel someday. Who knows? But, go.
How did you get your start in music?
Let's see. There's lots of beginning stories, I was told my grandfather was a clarinetist and a saxophone player in the big band era. I grew up with my mom, my dad, and my grandmother, and living in my house. So my grandmother, told me about her husband, who was my mom's dad, who was a saxophone player. So there was like this music connection as a kid, even though I didn't have a lot of music around my house as a child, because my dad would listen to like 50s music and country, occasionally. He was a truck driver. And my mom, she listened to AM pop radio in the car. And there wasn't a lot of stereos, and there wasn't Spotify, and there wasn't a lot of records. And I've talked about how my early drumming career started playing along to the Partridge Family records, because my mom bought Partridge Family records and the Carpenters. So guys ask me why I play that music. It's because that's the first albums I had to play drums along to, was those silly albums, It wasn't like I was the hippest guy in town, when it came to picking up music. So anyhow, long, short story of this is, I think I was told at a young age, my grandfather was a musician. So in 5th grade, I studied clarinet. And by the end of 5th grade, I broke my 2 front teeth. And that story goes, my mom wouldn't let me play she wouldn't let me play hardball. She wouldn't let me be in Little League that year. I wanted to be in Little League. It was in 5th grade. And she said, no, you're going to break your teeth. She said, you're going to get hit by a ball, and you're going to miss the ball, and it's going to hit you in the face. You're going to break your teeth. Now, I was a catcher at the time. Of course, catchers had masks on. I used to play first base too. But I wanted to be a catcher. That was my thing. I wanted to be Jerry Grody of the Mets. He was a famous catcher from the 60s, okay? So she goes, nope, you got to play softball. I played softball, and then we won this game, and we stopped at the local food store, the Acme food store, on the way home. And I went off and looked at the magazines where they had the car magazines and Mad Magazine and the comic books. And my mom called for me. All right, we're checking out. And I came down and went to go find her. And it was like I had to go through the front past the cash register. And there was a chain across the cash register. And I tried to jump over it. And I fell on my face and broke my 2 front teeth. Oh. And there went my clarinet career right there. It was over with. And so from clarinet, 6th grade, I decided to play drums because I could pick up sticks. I had 2 really messed up teeth, and off I went. By high school, I wanted to play drum set, and that's where my musical career began, playing drum set at 15. But I was playing snare drum and bass drum and cymbals and reading music, kind of, sort of, in school band and in middle school to high school. And then high school, I got in high school band and all that stuff, and marching and all that crap. So that's my start.
Okay, and that leads me into my next question. How was it going to Jersey City State College?
Good. My resume. That's impressive. Impressive, Sean. Well, let's talk about that. So when I'm in high school, I'm taking lessons with my friend Scott Hazen, who's been on my channel. We've been friends ever since I was 16 years old. He was in his 20s at the time, I guess. He was a jazz musician, rock musician. He gave me enough reading skills and stuff to try to audition for college. And I auditioned at 3 state schools. One was Glassboro State College, which is no longer called Glassboro. It's called Rowan University. The other one was Trenton State College, which was Trenton University. And the last one was Jersey City State College. And I decided, my mom said, you're going to college. And if I said, all right, fine, I'll go be a musician. That's what I'm going to be. So it was my way of basically saying, you want me to go to college? Fine. But I want to play music is what I want to do. Anyhow, long and short, I didn't get into the other two schools. I only got into Jersey City State. Matter of fact, the person who auditioned me would end up being my teacher, my mentor in college, Nick Serrato. He was a Broadway percussionist and drummer. And I went in for my audition, and I had done this Nard drum solo from the Nard book. And NARD was National Association of Rudimental Drummers. That's what NARD stood for. And I played the solo, and he goes to me, he goes, so you memorized that? He goes, and I said, yeah, I memorized it. He goes, you're playing that figure backwards. It was 1 EN, 2 EN. I was playing 1 and a 2 and a. I was playing it wrong. He called me out on it. And he said to me, you need to practice and you need to work on your reading. And really, I don't normally bring guys in that don't have their reading up to snuff. But I see you got a lot of heart, so I'm going to accept you into the school. And that's what he did. And my time at Jersey City State started there. I got into school. There was about 20 of us percussion and majors that year. We had one of the biggest percussion classes ever, and that's in the school in 1978. I'm still friends with a lot of those guys, probably the 8 to 10 guys that graduated that made it all the way to the end. I'm still friends with some of my closest friends. And when I got there, I wasn't good. I wasn't very good at all. And I remember I got in there first week, and everybody else was starting in the Anthony J. Cerrone book, which was called Portraits in Rhythm, which is an orchestral snare drum etude book. And I basically was starting in the Podemsky method book, starting with whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes. And off I went. And the first year of college was tough, really hard. I almost gave up at one point. But I went to a lesson with my teacher. And the week before, he basically said, if you come to the lesson unprepared again, I'm going to kick you out of school. That's what he said to me. So I went to my next lesson. I wasn't that much better. I really thought I was going to get kicked out of school. I really didn't have my stuff together. And it was funny. Basically what happened was I went in there, and it was like a word from God came through my teacher that day. And he said, no, you need to hang in there. I see the heart. You have a heart for this. And you just need to hang in there, and you'll get this. I see improvement, even though I don't see real improvement. But, and it was kind of like I was ready to quit and go in as a business major, do anything but music. You know what I mean? And he kind of kept me in there. And I ended up finishing state with a music degree. I got a BA in music. That was it. Not a teaching degree, not a performance degree, just a music degree. Got all my credits done and finished and got my degree and left. But from that point forward, things started to change. I started to become more musical. I ended up doing, you had to do a recital seminar, they called it. You had to do a seminar performance your second semester of college. So the first half was sophomores. The second half was the freshmen. I was a freshman. And I was working on a piece for my recital. And my piece was called Rondo for 4 toms, for 4 tom-toms. I played a 4 tom-tom piece on 4 rototoms. And I had to play this piece. And I remember when I played it, I really understood how to play music. I kind of had a feel for the dynamics and all the little tricky parts I had to play. I wasn't forcing it, and it just came out. And it was like one of the best things I did in college was that freshman college recital performance. And that was the start. And I played in 2 shows in college. I didn't play in the jazz band. I played in some other ensembles, concert band, men's choir. I played drums for that a couple times. And I played in the musical Grease my senior year of college. And that was kind of fun. But I always thought I was going to be a rock drummer. You know what I mean? That's what I thought I was going to be. And I had to I was exposed to jazz. I was exposed to a lot of guys who played jazz. It just didn't end up being what I did, but I still love trying to play jazz anyhow. So
I love your
you know.
I love your jazz drum covers and the rock drum covers.
Well, you're a fan, Sean. Thank you for being kind. You know, I try. So, okay, that was college.
And when was the moment that you knew you wanted to make drumming a career?
Well, I wanted to make drumming a career in college, but making drumming a career and having a real life are two different things. I wouldn't say I was successful at making drumming a career. What I will say is I never stopped drumming. And I think that's the tenacity I have inside of me, is to never quit, never give up. I have made money with drumming. I have, it paid bills when we were young. One of the things that happened to me my senior year of college was I met my future wife. Probably it was sophomore year of college, but she was not really available at that point. Let's put it that way. I don't want to get into that whole story, but yeah, that's the only way I can explain that at this point. But by senior year, she was available, and we kind of fell in love. And so I got out of college and I wanted to get married. So that changed my trajectory to being a professional musician full time. Because when you get a wife, and my wife was 25 and she had a 3-year-old daughter, I became an instant father the day I got married. And I was 22. So I was off to the races. It was like now the real world. But the one thing she made very clear to me, my wife made very clear to me during that first year of marriage, was you cannot quit playing music. Playing music is part of who you are. And I never stopped, and I've been playing music my whole life. So I have made money with it. So I've been a professional. You get paid as a professional, but making it a full-time career has not been possible. So.
How did you get your nickname, The Hammer?
Well, that's an interesting story. I was in a Christian band in 1987. That was the other thing. I became a Christian when I was in college. And I developed a faith. Of course, my wife had a faith. I met my wife at church. She was a worship leader. So, and let's go down this path. So what happened was I wanted to be in a Christian band, but Christian music was not a place to make a living either. Just by the way, it was not a place to make a living. Leave that. So I'm doing weddings and stuff. My wife is writing for magazines like Modern Drummer. She started writing for magazines like Modern Drummer and CCM magazine. And I got exposed to the contemporary Christian music scene. And there was a band in town, and I got into that band. And in 1987, I went and recorded an album in Nashville with the band. It was called Saved by Grace. We did one record. I came home, and from that album, I wanted to buy a snare drum. I was like, I had a 6.5 by 14 wood maple chrome over wood shell Slingerland snare drum, which I hated. And all the rage at that point was a piccolo snare drum. So I bought a brass piccolo, 3.5 by 14 pearl free floating piccolo snare drum. Now, the funny thing was, the same day I bought that snare drum, there was another drum I got introduced to, which was a 5 by 14 Ludwig brass superphonic snare drum, which is a lot like my favorite snare drum I use on a lot of my covers, which is a 5 by 14 black Beauty, which is a brass superphonic snare drum. It sounded a lot like that drum. And I could have bought that drum that day, but for some reason I bought that piccolo. And when I came to rehearsal with that piccolo, I had it all cranked up and I was like slamming it. And the lead singer goes, "You're cracking my head off. You're cracking my head off. I'm going to call you the hammer. You just biting my ears off." And it became like a kind of a funny nickname to me. Like, we'll call you the Hammer, because you keep hammering that drum through my head, and it kind of stuck, so, and that was about 1987, I guess. Yeah, right around 1987, I guess. or 88, somewhere in there. So it's been a long time.
Do you still have the piccolo?
No, don't have the piccolo anymore. A friend of mine named Sam, can't say his last name. We're friends on Instagram again. I found him after years of not being in touch. I traded him the piccolo snare drum. I think he still has it though. I think he said he did, for a 6.5 by 14 super sensitive Ludwig snare drum, kind of like the Bonham drum, but with the long snares on it. I didn't like that drum enough to keep it, so I got rid of that drum. So, that's just the way life is. I've had a lot of drums, so I don't have that one anymore.
I remember you told me about the drum regret stories.
Yeah, there's lots of regrets. I got lots of drum regrets. So anyhow, that's that.
What's your favorite gear to use for studio work versus events in church?
I have all kinds of drums and cymbals, so there's not a favorite. I've been using Gretsch drums since 1979. I bought my Gretsch kit, a walnut finished Gretsch kit in college. I had a Ludwig Vistalite kit, blue. You could see through it. Those disco drums, they look like the disco drums in the 70s, where you could see through the drums, and they were cool. They look cool. They sound like crap, but they look cool. I had 2 sets of them. I had a blue one and a green one, so I've had 2 sets of Vistalites in my lifetime. So I've had my experience with clear drums, and they're great if you just want to have a kit to kick around once in a while. They're fun. But they weren't cutting it for trying to be a jazz drummer in college, and so I kind of looked really stupid freshman year with the drum kit too. So freshman year I worked, and my mom thought I was working to pay for my college. She was wrong. I bought a drum kit. I bought this drum kit. She was not happy, So I love my Gretsch drums, and I prefer playing Gretsch drums in the studio because they sound great, but I think you can use just about any drum kit in the studio. As far as cymbals go, I've played Zildjian, Paiste, Sabian, Istanbul, my whole career, different variations of that. I've kind of found my way to Paiste in my latter years, the last 5-7 years, I guess. I play Paiste almost all the time in my videos, but I have a set of Zildjians. I have a set of Sabians. I played Sabian for 20-something years, not because they were giving me cymbals or I had an endorsement, just because I bought a nice set of cymbals when I was in that band, Saved by Grace, by the way. And that's all I had. The Sabian was what I bought, so that's what I had for 20 years. I really couldn't afford to buy a whole set of Paistes. I'd buy one-offs. I had like a China. I'd buy a set of hi-hats once in a while. I'd buy a ride cymbal. I dabbled, but I wasn't in it. And for that period of time with the Sabian cymbals, I really wasn't playing Zildjian. Like, I had a couple Zildjians too, but I wasn't playing them. So the Sabian period was a good 20 years, maybe a good 20 years, maybe 22 years. And then all of a sudden around 2012, I started to think, oh, maybe I should get some more Zildjians, and I had all my Sabians for a long time. And I bought a Zildjian ride, and then I bought a Paiste Crash. And then it was kind of like, oh, I really like the Paistes, and I started buying Paistes. And of course, my kids were grown up, married, and I had expendable income, and I wasn't buying as many microphones for my studio and wasting money on that. So I got into the Paiste thing, and I don't regret it. I love my Paiste cymbals. So I would pick my Paiste cymbals mostly, and I have like 15 snare drums, so I can't tell you what snare drum I would pick. Probably the Ludwig Black Beauty 5x14.
I love the Black Beauty too.
Yeah, it's a good drum.
So how did you begin your YouTube career?
That's a good story. Well, let's look. I had a friend, his name is Ken Burton, and this was way back in like 2008 or 9. I used to have a chapter of Drummers for Jesus used to meet in my house, in my studio. I don't know if you ever heard of Drummers for Jesus, but
Never heard of Drummers for Jesus.
Station that started in 2003 or 4. A guy named Carlos Benson was the founder. He started in Dallas, Texas, and then he basically had chapters all over the country. And I saw one of their videos from 2004 and 2005 from their conference in Dallas. And I called him up. I said, hey, how do you become a chapter leader? And he told me how to be a chapter leader. And I started a chapter in 2007. So during that time, I started meeting drummers in town. And one of the guys was a guy named Ken. And this is right around the time of MySpace, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay. And Ken said to me, he said, you know, you should make some drum videos for YouTube, you know, because people would watch you playing music to it, and you got a studio. And I said, I don't have a camera, you know, but it's a good idea, you know, maybe I should do that sometime. And then my son was trying to record himself doing guitar lessons. He thought about doing it on YouTube too. And I wish I could have helped him do that, because he might have been successful. You know, he could have been the next Guitario instead of Drumeo, you know, those guys. I got to give that guy Jared a lot of credit, man. He had the right idea at the right time. He was the right age, had the right technological thought process, and he did it. But I was like my late 40s, early 50s, and I didn't really get it, you know. So I didn't start doing it really. So around 2010, I got a Droid phone, and I started doing some videos, and I tried to marry the audio with the video and in Logic, and it worked. And I made a few videos, but it was really a lot of work. It was like, it used to take me hours to marry the video and the audio together. It just didn't make sense to me. It wasn't until 2016 when I was watching YouTube all the time. Like when I was playing in churches, I would just go watch church drummers play songs just to figure out how they did certain things. Like, oh, that's an interesting way to play that pattern. Oh, you start with this hand, not that hand. That makes sense. So I would learn songs watching YouTube, and I was very into watching YouTube. I'd wake up in the morning and watch YouTube on my iPad. And it was like a whole season of my life from 2012 to 2016. I was playing in churches, and I had to learn songs, and I'd watch, and I do occasionally do a video of myself, but nothing special. And I would watch guys like this guy, Terry Keating, called Bonzolium. And he was a guy that was into John Bonham and Paiste cymbals. And I had just got into Paiste cymbals heavily. And he was talking about Paiste 505s. And, you know, you could tell it was, you know, this type of 505. It was Black Label, and it was made in Germany. And he had he knew everything. I mean, it was like, I was just like mesmerized by this guy just sitting behind his drum kit, just rapping to a camera. And my wife walks in one day, and she goes, you know, you could do that. First she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just watching this guy, Terry Keating, talk. And she goes, you know, you can do what he does. I said, what? Just talk to the camera about your gear. You buy all this gear all the time. You should just talk about what you have. So I made a talking video. And the first talking video I did was about Paiste cymbals. I did it by myself. My wife did the intro. And then I did one on John Hammond, the drummer who replaced me on the Saved by Grace album. That's another story for another day. And then one on Danny Seraphin. And this was 2016. I'm still working at this cable contractor. I'm the director of learning and development for the company and safety guy for the company. And March of 2017, I get let go. They sold off half the business, and they said, we don't need you anymore. So I was in my severance agreement. I had an agreement with them, and they had to pay me for a certain period of time. So now I was unemployed, but I had a severance package, which meant I was taken care of for a period of time. Well, that period of time was quite a good period of time, by the way. And what happened was I had nothing to do. So I started making videos for YouTube. And I make a drum cover, and then I do a talking video. I did one on how to play 5 basic beats for playing in church, you know. So anybody could figure out how to be a church drummer if you can learn these 5 beats. You know, money beat, you know, 4 on the floor, the march beat. I think that's how you found me, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, sir. You got me through a lot of services.
Yeah, you know. And a bunch of pastors found me and worship leaders found me. And it was just a video I made one day because I had nothing to do. I had nothing to do. I put the lights on and the cameras on, and it was pretty archaic back then, the way I did things. I didn't have any kind of system at all. And that first year I had like 30 subscribers, And another thing that happened, that's right around that same time, right before I got let go, this guy found one of my videos. I did a video called Long Train Running by the Doobie Brothers. And he put me on his YouTube drummer show. I was one of the top 5 for the week of January something 2017, I thought that was kind of funny, So I had like 30 subscribers, then I had 40, and then people started finding me. I had 50, and then this kid named Drumman 190, Matthew, found me. And he said, "Hey, would you do a drum battle?" I said, "What's a drum battle?" He goes, "Well, you play a cover and another guy plays a cover, and then they vote on which ones they like better." So he puts me up against this guy, and I it wasn't really a match, really. You know what I mean? It wasn't even close, I don't think. And then I did a couple more of these drum battles, and I lost the next one to a guy named Jeff Holden. That was kind of funny. Did Toto's Rosanna. And then they had a contest for drum cover of the year, and I submitted Carry On Wayward Son in 2017, drum cover of the year. And I got into the top, I was in the top 10, then I was in the top 3, and then I won it. Won a whole, I think $100 from Drum Covers by Bill and Drumman 190. Nice. So yeah, I got $100. And by that time I eked up to 200 subscribers, just about that time, around January of 2018. And then I had 400 subscribers. And it was like, wow. And then YouTube said, well, you can't monetize anymore unless you have 1,000 subscribers. And I was like short of that by over 500 subscribers at that point. And right around that same time, I was doing a lot of covers. I started to figure out how to do this, make covers, make music, put it in iMovie and make the music come together. And I figured it all out. I just got really quick at doing it. And also I would put out a video almost every other day, and then people would ask me questions. And as they asked questions, I realized I'd have to sit there typing, on my iPad, and it didn't make any sense. So one day I thought, hey, I'm just going to answer the question with a video. So I called the first show Ask Earl Anything. It was part of Drum Talk. I had a show called Drum Talk where I talked about drums and equipment, called it Drum Talk Ask Earl Anything. And I was on for 14 minutes and I answered about 5 or 6 questions. And the next week I got 7 or 8 more questions. So I did it the next week and then the next week. And pretty soon I was doing it every week. And that first year, when I started, I did every week from that point to the end of the year, the whole year. I did about almost 48, 49 episodes because I started like closer to February of 2018. Meanwhile, I got a new job. I started my new job and was working for the company I'm working for now. But I was still making drum covers. I knew how to make, from 2017 when I started doing it to that point, I had a formula how to do it. And I started making a lot of drum covers and a lot of talking videos. And by June of 2018, I had 1,000 subscribers and I monetized. And out of that group of guys that were trying to get up and running, during the drum battle era, not the Matthews, but the other ones, I banged out there and I got into 1,000 subs. And from that point forward, 2018, about every 10 months, I get another 1,000 subscribers. And that's my formula. I don't know if it's a formula. It's just what I do. And so I've been eking my way up towards 7,000 now, whatever that is. I've been doing this over 5 years. And it's kind of like, it kind of was a saving grace for me because I needed an outlet to play music, COVID hit. I needed that outlet to play music, and I played a lot of music during COVID. But I was already playing a lot of music in 2018. I was doing 4 covers a week probably in 2018, 2019. By the time we hit COVID, I was putting out videos every day. Now, of course, I also you know, that my son passed away in 2019, and that there was a lot of grief in there. And this was a way of keeping me alive at that point. This is how I would just, instead of sitting there crying, I would come in here and play music that inspired me and gave me hope and would say things to the world, you know. And if you watch my videos from 2019, about August, the end of August, and I don't think I really released anything at the end of August, but September on into deep into COVID, you will find a lot of videos where I just pour out my heart in the description. I just talk about things that are deep to me, things the song meant to me, how the song related to my son, how the song relates to comfort, how the song relates to my relationship with God. And you would find all that stuff in those descriptions. And you'd also find out what cymbals I played, you know, and what drums I had that day, you know. And sometimes that would be right, sometimes it would be wrong, you know. And I have guys that actually write me when, like, hey, you know, that's not the 2002 big beat up there, it's the 2002 ride cymbal. Well, thanks for letting me know. Got it wrong today. Sorry, you know, sue me, you know. So.
He told me the stories about when you have the guys that think you're pretentious.
Yeah, I got that too. That's another. There's that. YouTube opens up a can of worms, dude. You just have to kind of throw it. You know, this is something I used to hear in church all the time. You know, just got to eat the meat, spit out the bones. You know, eat the meat, spit out the bones. I just didn't realize that most of the stuff that was bones, there wasn't a lot of meat on my sermons in church. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah, sir. And you always talked about drum community and what are the benefits of drum community, or so some people may not even know what drum community is.
You want to know the truth? Drum community for me started back at Drummers for Jesus. When I started Drummers for Jesus, I had sometimes 15 guys in the studio. We'd all be hanging out, talking about Jesus, talking about drums. And I have a couple friends in town still that call me up. I had a good friend of mine. His name is John Favicchia. He's a drummer from New York. He's a pretty well-known clinician, drum teacher, amazing chops drummer. He's written a book. He's got his own system for how to play drums, and he gave me a copy of it. I gave him some UAD cards. That's another story. He was down here one day. We just gave him some stuff, and he said, "Hey, you want this book?" And he signed it for me. But he called me up the other day. And he said, "Hey, you know, you know, the COVID and everything, you know, I look forward to coming back down and doing another hang." So I've had a couple guys say, let's just get together in the studio and hang. So I've always had drummers I hang with. College was a hang. I told you about my college friends, right? Yeah. I still am close to some of those guys because we used to hang. That was what college was. It was about the hang. Drummers like hanging out. Drummers like being with one another. So you don't see a guitar. I don't know if there's a guitar player community out there on YouTube. I mean, there are great guitar players and there's sites people follow. And I know there's a bass player community, but I don't know if there's a guitar player community, but I can tell you there's a drummer community and it's all over the place. And what does it mean to me? I don't know. Sometimes, some days it's good. Some days it's bad. Some days I don't know if I feel a part of it anymore. Some days I wonder if I'm not really a part of the new community, you know, because I don't really contribute to the selling of myself, you know, as much. I just do what Earl does every week. So I have people love me though, and they watch my stuff like you, and you know. So I don't know. Does that answer that question?
Yes, sir. You hit the nail on the head for me.
Okay.
How did faith play a part in your journey?
Without faith, there is no journey for me. God had his finger on me as a kid, you know. I was a good Catholic kid. Okay. I know, you know, you talk to born again Christians like, oh, Catholic, ooh, that's pretty bad, you know. You know. I could tell you, I knew God as a kid. I did. I had a born again experience in college. My roommate was a Christian, you know, a born again Christian. witnessed Jesus to me, and I accepted Christ into my heart, and I said the sinner's prayers. And so I said all the magic bean words and everything. So I'm saved. Okay. But I could tell you those Catholics might be saved too, the way we look at this is a little bit weird in evangelical worlds. I've grown to understand that those that confess Christ come of all types and come from all different backgrounds, and his grace is his saving grace is abundant. But my first experience with God was I used to play baseball in a cemetery when I was a kid. You say, how do you do that? Well, my block lived on the fence between us and a cemetery. And we used to climb the fence, and there was a big open field where there were going to be graves one day. But at that point in time, they were just big plots of green grass. And we as kids in the summertime would climb the fence and play baseball out there in the cemetery. And one day I slid in at second base and was out. And I just laid there at second base. The game was over. Everybody was packing up, getting ready to go home and do something else. And I just was laying up there looking in the clouds. And I was really afraid of God because I was an altar boy at the time. And I used to go in the big cold church and turn the lights on and light the candles. And it was scary. God was scary, God in church was scary. But that day in the cemetery, looking up in the clouds, I sensed God say to me, I love you. And I'm here for you. And I'm here with you. And don't be afraid. And that kind of comforted me as a kid. And I was never afraid again in the church building again. And I would open it up and light the candles and do all the spooky religious stuff that Catholics do, and I knew God was with me. So that was 10 years old. Without faith, I don't have a life here on earth. God has directed my path. He has been a part of my life. When I'm in trouble, I go to him. Even when I'm not in trouble, I go to him. It's kind of like, Lord, show me what to do today. I don't always listen. I'm just as bad as anybody else. I have my days, and I have my moments, and I have my sins, and I have my things that I rebel against. And some days us humans are very stubborn, but God knows that. That's what his son's all about. So what his son did was he kind of erased it and said, you know what? I've come that you might have life and life more abundantly. And that's what he did. He dropped that into my heart at a very young age, and he showed me his love. So I don't think I would have a life here without Christ.
And that's how Proverbs 3:5-6 became your life verse.
Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. The story of that is I was in college. I was dating my future wife at the time. We were writing letters to one another. There was no internet, no email, no text messages. Matter of fact, I used to call a payphone on Kennedy Boulevard out in front of the college. There was a payphone on a lamppost out in front of 2040 Kennedy Boulevard, which was the apartment building that was the school apartments that I lived in. And I would call her, and the buses would be going by, and the cars would be going by, and it'd be cold, and the rain would be on me, and I'd be on the phone. Matter of fact, I actually sold a symbol to pay for a phone bill. We were talking collect on the phone one day for about an hour on the phone. But we also used to write letters. And one of the letters we both wrote letters back and forth to one another. In the letter that went back to each other, we both quoted the same verse to one another, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. And this is when we were trying to figure out what we were at that point, And that became our life verse. And when we got married, it was quoted in our wedding. And we said we were going to engrave it in our rings, which we never did. But I think it's actually engraved in secret, God-like spirit things on this ring. It's in there, even though there's no inscription, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, like we said we were going to do because we're too poor to do it. It's there, And it's been what's directed my path and guided me through life. When he's there for me. I don't know what else to say. It's not, ooh, God, I hear God this way. It's not like he's telling me to go do stupid stuff. It's like I just have a knowing when I'm on the right path, and I have a knowing when I'm not on the right path real fast. Does that make?
Yes, sir. That's deep, Mr.
Yeah. Well, you get to my age, you got to be deep.
Yes, sir. Do you have any words of wisdom you would like to share with the listeners today?
Trust God. That's the deepest word I can give you. And when you think of God, remember that God is not about power. God is about love. And the scary thing for man, and this is what scares me about the world today, is that the world is all about power. Who's in control? Who's at the top? Who's telling who what to do? Is it the guy telling the woman telling the guy? There's always a power struggle, a power paradigm. Jesus came and he said, the greatest of these is love. Paul told us that in Corinthians 13, faith, hope, and love, but love is the greatest. The greatest of these is love. Jesus showed us by laying down his life on the cross that he did not take up the power that he had in him as God. He was truly all God and all man when he came to earth. He did not take the power up, but he laid his life down because he loved us. And he said, there's nothing greater than to lay down your life for a brother. So it's about love or power we choose in life. I choose love. Love will bring you down a road of being compassionate towards people, caring about people, and not seeking after what you want, but thinking about what they want. So I try to do that in life as best I can. I fail a lot, but I try. So that's my word of wisdom.
Yeah, Mr. Ron. From what I've seen on the videos and just the talks we have during the drum lessons, I've seen nothing but love from you, Mr. Earl. If you had a bad day, I didn't know it.
Oh, I have plenty of bad days. Bad days are part of life, Sean. Anyhow, yeah, that's it. Anything else for me?
That's all my questions, Mr. Earl, and I'll go ahead and I'll close us out with the outro. This is Behind the Music, the show where we interview extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. I hope that you were blessed by the wisdom that Mr. Earl shared with us, because I really